Welcome everyone to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, the Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3, Jimmy. It is the first Wednesday of October, October the 4th, 2023. And if it's Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Men Speak. So let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music and to Forest Films in our own studio for providing our virtual studio that allows us to bring this show to you. And if there's anyone else, Tom, I don't think that I've missed anybody for shout outs, because we'll certainly give shout out to those who support us a little later into the show. But with that being said, Tom, and some of the business behind us, let's get started and let's do what we do.
all right, Jimmy, we're going to start off with the birthday celebrations this week. So for those of you who got
All right.
birthdays in October, we're going to show you who you might be sharing a birthday with starting this week. Jimmy, starting with today, for those of you who've been music lovers for a long time, you might know this guy here,
Oh,
Russell.
yeah. Yeah, Russell Simmons. He's pioneered. He's certainly Deaf Poetry Jam and Deaf Comedy Jam. So a major player.
Yep, his birthday is today, October the 4th. Definitely happy
Congratulations.
birthday. Yeah, happy birthday to him. And for those of you out there whose birthday is today, you share a birthday with Russell Simmons. Jimmy, I think this next person you will probably connect with because I mean,
Oh,
you consider to be yourself the knowledge
oh, okay.
in the world. Neil
Yes.
deGrasse, the great the great astrophysicist.
Astrophysicist, yes.
Absolutely.
I watch a
Very,
lot of his videos online.
very intriguing content. Been around for a long time, Jimmy. His birthday is tomorrow on October the 5th. So definitely an early happy birthday to
Happy
him.
birthday.
Absolutely. So we want to give him some shout outs. Next, for those of you who are music lovers, you might know this beautiful lady, Tony Braxton.
Oh, okay. I didn't even recognize her. Her face has changed a little bit.
Yeah, she has matured very well, but still looking good, Jimmy, and has had some great music in the
She
past.
did.
Jimmy. Absolutely. So we want to definitely wish her a early happy birthday as well. And this next gentleman probably spans about at least three generations. The civil rights great Jesse Jackson.
All right. He just
Yep,
recently stepped down and retired from Rainbow Push, and one of our local ministers have taken over, at least replaced his position. So, but happy birthday to the Reverend. So,
yep, yep.
wish him many more.
Matter of fact, our pastor, Frederick Douglass Hayes the
Uh,
third,
our
taking
frat
over.
brother. Yes.
Absolutely. And our last birthday shout out for the day, Jimmy. We haven't seen this face in a long time. Ben Vereen.
Oh, yes.
He
Man,
has,
you're right. I haven't seen that face in a while.
he has a birthday coming up on October the 10th, Jimmy. Been on a lot of shows, but I think really what I remember him most, of course, was for his presence in, of course, I think this was maybe Jimmy back in the 70s. This is Roots.
Yes.
So, Jimmy, those are our birthday shout outs for today. And for those of you out there who have birthdays in the early part of August, happy birthday to you, your family, and your loved ones. And definitely enjoy and have a good time, Jimmy. And we have got a jam packed show today, a lot of good news, a lot of interesting news coming out that we're going to share for you. So, of course, you're going to have the most interesting and well informed conversations at work and or at home. And Jimmy, we're going to start out with the great one.
Oh,
Because,
okay. The goat.
yes, Jimmy, Michael Jordan has showed up on the Forbes list recently as one of the wealthiest 400 people, the Forbes 400 wealthiest 400 people.
Well, the thing is, the sale of the Bobcats probably didn't hurt his bottom line. So,
Yeah, yeah, at the end of the day, I know there were some people who may have been kind of looking some other way because he sold the Bobcats, Jimmy, but that is really what catapulted him into the Forbes 400. He actually bought the broadcast for about 275 million back in 2010. I don't know the exact amount of what he sold it for earlier this year, Jimmy, but that is
Pretty sure it's several billion.
exactly that catapulted him into number 379 out of the Forbes 400 wealthiest people on their list. And he actually became a billionaire, Jimmy, in 2015. He
Okay.
had, those lucrative deals with Nike back in the day and the Hanes commercials, Gatorade. And he's been a billionaire for almost a decade now, but now he is in the Fortune 400. And also something that I don't know that I was aware of before doing the research, but he has made the largest contribution as a philanthropist to the Make-A-Wish America Foundation, contributing $10 million on his 60th birthday.
Okay. Well, congratulations to Michael Jordan. You know, I'm a big Lakers and Magic Johnson fan from that era. So having to acknowledge him as a GOAT, is really tough for me. But I do have to admit, give credit where credit is due. But on top of that, Tom, he's been exemplary in the way he has managed his career and his image and his name and his brand. Um, Not a whole lot of trouble. I mean, the divorce maybe, but he's kept his name clean for the most part. Tom, you don't see him getting in trouble. Dealing with the law and law issues. So, congratulations to Mike.
Right? I mean, Jimmy, 5 MVPs in the NBA, 6 championships, world championships in the NBA. Jimmy, I think there's only one guy, of course, Bill Russell, has more championships in the NBA at least than Michael Jordan.
Correct. That is true.
So definitely congratulations on reaching that list. To your point, he's always kind of been in the news, but he's kind of quietly been doing this, even though he's been very visible in certain ways.
Yes. Yeah, he doesn't tie his name to a lot of causes timeless or good. You don't see him get involved with a lot of fad movements. So he generally stays out of the limelight when it comes to social and political issues. I mean, which is a good thing because he does have a brand to protect, and so he's done a good job in that. So, much congratulations to him, and I mean, I wish other professional athletes would do the same.
Jimmy, we need a lot of other professional athletes to do the same because unfortunately we have too many who retire from sports within 3 to 4 years, Jimmy. They are in dire straits financially.
Yes, that's true. Far too
So
many of them, Tom.
yeah, so we need to, they need to take something out of Jordan's playbook. Everybody's not a Jordan, but in terms of his business strategy, his investment strategy, his conservative values when it comes to building an enterprise, Jimmy, there are a lot of very famous athletes, unfortunately, Jimmy, who blew a lot of money because of their lifestyle requirements. And it's not to say that Michael Jordan had his vices. We know some of his infamous tales, at the gambling casinos, but
Right,
obviously he's done right by his money.
right. Yes.
All right, some other good news, Jimmy, and I think you can definitely appreciate that given your focus on education. Claudine Gay has been recently installed as the first Black president of the esteemed Harvard University.
Didn't we cover this story already?
We actually talked to something similar to this, but I don't know if we covered this as her being the first president because this just recently happened.
Okay. Okay. Well,
But
congratulations to her.
absolutely, but no, she is the first person of color and the second woman to lead Harvard University.
Other
Um,
story was for the theology department.
there you go.
Yes,
Exactly.
you're right.
Exactly. And the only reason that she came to play is because she was actually the dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences department, which I believe is where that particular department stood under the Arts and Sciences division.
Okay.
But at any rate, yeah, she has been with Harvard for a few minutes. She got her bachelor's degree from Stanford University. She got a PhD in political science from Harvard in 1998. She taught political science at Stanford from 2000 2006 before rejoining Harvard, and is actually the daughter of Haitian immigrants. coming into the United States, before she made her fame in the educational arena. So, Jimmy, it just kind of goes back to, your statement on, working hard and focusing on education to make a difference.
Well, Tom, we see this over and over, this pattern repeating itself. And why is there so many people of our color who are immigrants to this country somehow don't see the same glass ceiling that we see, from being here? So they just come here, they do extraordinary things, their children do extraordinary things, Tom, because they just don't know they're not supposed to.
Correct.
And so I wish that we would get past looking at ceilings and focusing on ceilings and worrying about what we can't do and what other people won't let us do and what white people will allow us and what they won't allow us to do, and just go out and do it. Just live your life, achieve your dreams, and don't be afraid to dare to reach for the stars. And so, congratulations to her, Tom. But this is not surprising that she's the daughter of immigrants from Haiti, of all places, Tom.
Right.
We know the trouble that that country is having historically and even now. And for her parents to have immigrated here, which is a great move. But for her to achieve what she's achieved, because she could have easily, Tom, if they had stayed in that country, she could easily be dead right now.
Very true, Jimmy. And I think, being the daughter of Haitian immigrants, that reputation that the Haitians have having 10 or 12 jobs. So they
Yeah.
work very hard to
Give them the
get.
Jamaicans now. Don't leave the Jamaicans out.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha.
They're good for having lots of jobs also.
Gotcha. So, congratulations
Yes,
to Dr.
congratulations.
Kay. We wish her the best of luck. We know she'll do a great job. We'll definitely support her. And I think that she is surely an inspiration to a lot of other women, a lot of women of color, a lot of people of color, given her very humble background, she is now the leader of the most esteemed Ivy League private university, if not in the country, among the most esteemed in the world.
Yes.
So we definitely want to congratulate her. We expect great things from her, and again, keep people inspired. Jimmy, before we move any further, let's go ahead and acknowledge a couple of people that are on our chat line
Well,
already.
we need you to do that, Tom, because I don't half the time I don't see the chats when they come in.
Okay. All right. So we got the great brother Frederick V. Roberts Esquire,
Okay.
who has joined us. Good evening to you, my good brother. And thank you for joining us, Miss Dominique Vining out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. Thank you for joining us this evening. My cousin, Miss Audrey K. Booker out of the DFW areas as well. And Armanda Brown, thank you for joining us this evening. And matter of fact, we have a comment here from Brother Robert said, also take note that the president of Rice University is a Haitian immigrant. By the way, both were mentored by Dr. Ruth Simmons. Did not know
Okay.
that. Good deal. And I believe that is it. And I'm pretty sure we'll have a couple of other folks who will join us. But thank you for joining the chat line. Let us know your thoughts if you have any questions and or thoughts. Now, I'm going to spin back to a little sports. Of course, it's the fall, Jimmy, and when it's the fall, we know it's football season. And so I know that you're a big fan of football.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah, the pro and college. But Jimmy, everybody has been paying attention to the NCAA for what's going on in Boulder, Colorado.
Yes, they have.
And I know that we have talked about a couple of different things in particular having to do with Dion, but another interesting story is about one of his standout players a couple of weeks ago during the game against Colorado State, Travis Hunter, who transferred to Colorado after Deion Sanders left, of course, to continue to be tutored and mentored by probably the greatest cornerback of all time in the NFL, statistically speaking. And during the Colorado State game, Jimmy, for those of you out there who watch college football and saw this, he was injured during the Colorado State game, I think, during I forgot whether it was the late first quarter or the second or the very beginning of the second first quarter, but Travis Hunter took a brutal late hit by one of the
A
Colorado
flagrant
State
hit,
players.
Tom.
Yeah, it was
So you're
deliberate.
being
It
kind once again
was,
by just calling it a late hit. It was a flagrant late hit, and so it wasn't even called for.
Exactly, Jimmy. And I understand when you're in the sport and you're trying to send a message, but Jimmy, that's way over and above what should be called for. And unfortunately, Travis Hunter suffered a lacerated liver. I think he's out a minimum of maybe 4 weeks. I think he's already had to sit out 2 games, and I think this past week, um, Coach Prime, as they call him, Coach Sanders, said he's going to probably be out another couple of weeks. But the interesting thing about this, Jimmy, is when you look at the narrative of this, I was shocked that not he got a flag, but the question is, why wasn't it a suspension? And then, of course,
That's true.
after the game, both teams, both universities, both coaches condemned the death threats that the Colorado State player and his family were getting. But I
Mm,
guess what was astounding to me is that they were spending more time talking about the death threats as opposed to player safety. And
right.
anyone who saw this, it was egregious. It was uncalled for. There's no place in the game for it. It potentially change the trajectory of the next 2 games. Oregon, who they lost to, and USC, who they lost to. But man, if you checked out that USC game, he possibly could have made a difference in that game. So this targeted hit potentially changed the trajectory of 3 or 4 games, Jimmy, and possibly the season, even though I think Colorado will do very well. My question to you, Jimmy, is this, because I know that you know the rules. Why didn't they suspend Henry Blackburn, number one? And, I did some research. They do have rules against targeting in the
They
NCAA, and
do.
there are, suspensions when there is clear targeting. I don't understand what happened.
Right, Tom. And most of the time, the player who's guilty of it is just charged with an ejection, so they're kicked out of the game. Um, the suspension after that by the
NCAA.
NCAA is kind of rare, so it'd be really, really bad. And this is one of those cases that
It
probably
was really,
they
really
should
bad.
have they should have reviewed and looked at, and a suspension would have been warranted. Um, and so, but I don't. I'm thinking that this is just and it may still. I mean, there's time. I mean, they may just haven't gotten to it yet, or they may still be considering some form of punishment for that level of play. But I'm thinking that they've looked at and reviewed it, Tom, and just chalked it off as um, something that was just unfortunate. So yeah, that may have been intentional, but not with the intention of hurting the player, but maybe just trying to send a message of or intimidate the player. And but when that happens, we can see that you open like that to a late hit and you're unguarded, the damage they can do. You can really hurt somebody. And so I think it's optimistic to say that he's going to come back in 4 weeks. Tom, you're already 4 games into the season. The season's only 10, 11, 12 games. So he's already missed, already a third of the season is gone. He's going to be out for another third. And then you have to rehab and get back in shape. So chances are he's out for the season.
I don't know
And
that he's out for the season, Jimmy, but I think from what they were saying earlier this week, they have another game or two, then they go into a bye, and maybe he comes back after that. We definitely hope that he can come back after that because I mean, what's going on in Boulder right now is unprecedented, at least for their program. And you hate to see things that happen like this. Now, the other interesting thing that happened is that Travis Hunter actually reached out to the player that took him out and invited him to go bowling. This was, of course, after all the death threats and stuff like that. And I guess they were trying to calm things down. And he invited him to go bowling, and they went bowling together. And I don't know if this was kind of a something to kind of get the temperature down on this and to make amends for what happened. Jimmy, I don't know too many people who would have done that.
well, Tom, it just goes to show that the program there being led by Dion is a class act. And
Yeah.
so you're right. Normally that would have happened. That young man's better than I am because I don't know if I would have done it. So
You
but I
would
mean that's
have
just
Jimmy.
no, Tom, because you know what, that's a serious injury.
It
When you're
is.
talking about your liver, the liver does not heal very well. So you're talking about laceration on your liver, you're talking about fat around your liver. All these things are life threatening, and it may not catch up with you today or tomorrow, but years from now, you're in your 40s and 50s, and you're now suffering from liver damage over that particular blow. You know what I mean? So yeah, this could seriously affect the quality of his life as he gets older.
Very true, Jimmy. I would agree with you because as we know, as we've seen over the last decade or so, as the NFL has been exposed for, not taking care of some of the players and being what some of us would call a little bit chintzy on the medical benefits of players after they've retired. You have people like Julius Sayal, who, unfortunately committed suicide in a very
Yes.
untimely death. You have Mike Webster, a lot of Pro Bowl caliber players who literally died early because of the injuries that they sustained during the NFL. And those are the folks that we know, not the ones that we
Well,
don't.
Tommy, even the ones who don't die, I mean, their quality of life after they leave that sport. You think about Earl Campbell. I
Yeah.
mean, he's pretty much crippled after leaving that sport from all the hits he took. McMahon, who lost his short-term memory. Um, you see that movie 50 Dates. That was him. That guy who only could remember something for 10 seconds. That was him. He didn't don't remember family, his fiance, his children. So yeah, that sport could be brutal, Tom. And so all of the precautions should be taken. I know there's always a sense of urgency to get back on that field, but you may want to take your time and really heal your body up rather than trying to rush to get back.
Yep, it is absolutely wild. And while we're doing that, just wanted to acknowledge one of our other followers and supporters, the Uncle Assad Al Kabelan, who of course has been a consummate supporter of the Black Men Speak podcast. And we want to thank you for supporting us
Thank you very
as
much.
well. So, Jimmy, why don't we go ahead and go to the next story? It is October. And for those who've had student loans, over the years, Jimmy, October is kind of probably a month that folks were dreading. But as of October the 1st, that 3 month hiatus is now gone, and people are going to have to start back paying those student loans.
Okay, Tom, we say this as if we're a little shocked and surprised by it. Once again, I've always been saying this is that we trade away economic investment in the black community for student loan debt forgiveness. And to me, that promise of debt forgiveness was always a sham. It wasn't going to get through Congress. If it did get through Congress, it was going to be challenged in the courts. And somehow, if it really got through both of those systems, then the actual amount would be some ridiculous $5,000, $10,000, where it really didn't make that much of a difference. And all I can say, Tom, is that for the people who took the loans out, I hope that it was a good investment, that it led to you getting a degree in a career field that allows you to repay the money back. For those that are stuck with degrees that are worthless because you maybe majored in Middle Eastern, midget women's studies or something, lesbian studies, then I feel for you. All I can say is that for the commitment that you made to repay the loan back needs to be kept. That's just real life. You repay car loans, home loans, personal loans, business loans. I mean, Tom, I've had to pay a bunch of loans back myself. I don't like it when I'm constantly having to write checks to these entities, but that's just part of our lifetime, and we need to be mature about it, and we need to do the responsible thing. Honor your commitment. I don't hear you, Tom. So either you're on mute or I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay,
There,
is that better?
yes.
All right, Jimmy. So, yeah, I would agree with you, Jimmy. It's an investment in your education, but, there were some folks, Jimmy, who continued to pay on their loans, Jimmy. And I think that for those folks who continue to pay on their loans, even during the pandemic, that they got some rewards because there are some folks, Jimmy, who are actually getting debt relief and getting some of their debt but I think that is primarily folks who have been paying on their loan during this period.
Yes, and certainly, Tom, there have been some aspects of the student loan program that have not been fair as far as the payments. All I can say is do your best to pay it back as quickly as you can. Making the minimum payment only means you're going to be paying for a very long time. So it's just like with your house. And I've been told, Tom, I think with the interest rates and the repayment schedule, some people have already paid these loans back twice, and they still owe a great deal, over half on the principal. So I acknowledge that the process maybe isn't fair. The terms aren't the fairest, but that's just life, Tom. A lot of us are stuck in loans that are not structured fairly. So all I could say is that if you're in one of these loans, do your absolute best to just pay it back and get it done with as quickly as you can. Sitting back waiting for someone to forgive it, it's going to be it's a tough sell. It's a gamble, but when you're not paying that loan, the interest is steady accruing, the principal is steady building. So it's not like it's going to go down. Even if it goes down a little bit, the penalties and interest from not paying on it will exceed whatever small amount of forgiveness that you get from the government.
You're right, Jimmy. So, with that being said, during that 3 year period, where you didn't have to pay, for those who actually continue to pay on those loans, Jimmy, I think they got an early Christmas gift. And, there are, some programs out there that do support, folks who are paying those loans, especially folks who are in public service, Jimmy. I think there's a program for those who have either been working with the government and or I believe the teachers, Jimmy, if they commit to 10 years, I believe that their debt is, in essence, eliminated after 10
There are
years.
some school districts, Tom, that have those programs, and if you have a chance to refinance your student loan to a low interest rate, by all means do it. So it'll be worth it to get some relief on the payments. But yes, there are some school districts that will pay your student loan off if you commit to becoming a teacher. Especially for some challenged districts. And some of these towns are not the most um, lucrative. I'm not going to say lucrative, not the most ideal cities to teach in. But whatever you have to do, if teaching is an option for you and you're flexible about where you teach, I mean, that may be a chance, Tom, to go teach somewhere in an area where they're having trouble recruiting teachers, and get your student loans paid off in the process.
We do have a question actually from this LBC. Says, can these laws be seen as predatory when the university tuition has become extremely inflated? Any guidance for future students in regards
So I'm
to
having a
tuition
hard
and
time hearing you, Tom. I don't know if you moved away from your mic or.
yeah, well, it sounded like I was told that I have an echo, and so I just moved a little bit.
Okay, that's better.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, basically, the question from LBC on our chat line, can these loans be seen as predatory in nature? University tuition has become extremely inflated. Any guidance for future students in regards to taking loans?
Yes, Tom, very predatory in nature. Most loans are predatory in nature. And so it's all about managing the risk. And college kids are high risk because they have no job, they have no collaterals, they have nothing built up, and they don't have a credit report. So the loans are structured very predatory. And so all I can say is that the sooner you start repaying the loan and get that off your back, the better off you are. Making the minimum payment is going to mean that you're going to be on the hook for a very long time. And
And I
unfortunately,
would
Tom,
say,
they've shown that a lot of these kids, Tom, were making payments faithfully, but they've been making the
mm,
minimum payment. They've been paying for years, and if you just look at what they paid into the system, they've whatever the amount was, they've already paid into the system two and three times that amount, and they still owe over half of the principal. So it looks like when you make that minimum payment, you're gonna be paying for a very long time. So take your tax return, take whatever extra money you have, and get that thing paid off, or get it refinanced. If you're doing better in life, you have a job, you have some credit that you've built up. If you could push this loan off to a credit card or some other instrument that allows more favorable terms, then do that. So simply holding on to it and making the minimum payment means that you're going to be on the hook for a very long time.
I would say, Jimmy, that the best loan is no loan if you can help it. If that means to get another job, while you're in school in order to, try to either one, eliminate the possibility of having to use an exorbitant amount of loans, or to get a job after you get out so that you can pay those loans off as fast as you possibly can. When you're paying the minimum amount, unfortunately, Jimmy, you get to the point where you're paying interest primarily,
That's
not
it.
principal,
Yeah, most
because
of your payments is just interest. You may have $5 of your payment going to principal, and how long is it going to take you to pay down, $40,000, $50,000 in debt, $5 or $10 a month?
So, all that being said, Jimmy, for those who are out there and you do have loans, there are programs out there. Of course, we know that the White House is trying to get some debt relief. I read a little bit. Think about somewhere on the order of magnitude 125,000 folks with loans. I think may have gotten some of their student loan forgiven, Jimmy. But at the end of the day, on the most part, unfortunately, it's really the big companies who are in politician pockets who typically get their loans paid off, not the small fries or the small
Right.
companies.
That is true.
So
So,
let's continue to move forward, Jimmy. Our next story, another interesting story this past week, Jimmy. Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, at the tender age of 90 years old, passed, and
right.
LaFonza Butler was appointed by Governor Gavin of California to be only the third Black woman to serve in the U.S. Senate, which, I didn't really think that it was just the third, but just the third Black woman to serve. She wasn't elected, she was appointed, but it's still significant.
Right, and the first openly gay or lesbian black woman. So, and I think Tom, according to the governor, she was appointed to sort of fill the position until the seat comes up for reelection or for to be filled by election. And so I'm not sure she's going to run for the seat. She guess she could, but I think the strategy was he didn't want to prejudice anyone who was looking to run for that seat when it opens up by appointing them to the position. So by appointing someone, that frequently happens. I think one time when I was being considered for a city council seat that opened up, I may have appointed someone else. I thought maybe he would consider me, but he knew that I was looking to run for an office and that it would be best to fill it with someone who's not looking to run for office. So that happened, but congratulations to her. I think she was sworn in yesterday by the vice president, Miss Harris.
You are exactly right, Jimmy. So congratulations. I think she has 2 years to fill out that term, and congratulations and best of luck to her on that, Jimmy. Why don't we do this? It's a little bit over halfway through the show, no, Jimmy, and I want to make sure that if nothing else, we take the time. There are a couple of announcements that you wanted to make, and since this is the
Yes.
first Wednesday of the month, and we've tried to do something and focus on young people. I know that you've been doing some coaching, Jimmy. We want to talk a little bit about that, what it looks like. There may be some folks out there that have a young person that might benefit from this program.
Okay, so thank you, Tom. And actually, I may go ahead and combine both of these into one segment. The first being if for business consulting. Of course, I joined the group Business Solution 360 as one of their principal partners and coaches. And basically, Business Solution 360 serves small businesses that want to grow. And so, if you're a small business or you're looking to start a small business, the thing that separates a small business from a multi conglomerate corporation is a few tried and tested principles. And so, if you're looking to grow and to have that type of wealth that comes from generating a business that's built around generating wealth, then come talk to us. Go to our website, businesssolution360.com. There's a Ask the Experts section there. So if you just have business questions about formation, about raising capital, about the right structure, and how do you go from being a mom and pop business to something that's going to help you survive, walk away, sell the business, earn wealth, have a life. Because Tom, most of the small clients that I have, the number one problem is that they're stuck. They've just really created a job for themselves. They work 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, and they are the business. They can't walk away. They can't get sick. They can't take vacation because when they do, the business is not earning money. And that's not what you want to do with a small business. You need to start a small business and grow it into an entity that can generate wealth for you when you walk away from it. So you can have a life, you can take vacation, spend time with your wife, your children, or your spouse. I hate to be, I need to be gender neutral. Right? Not all business owners are men. But the point is that if you want to grow beyond just creating a job for yourself and really have a chance to grow a business that generate wealth, come talk to us at businesssolution360.com. Now, the other thing, Tom, is on a personal note. We're both alphas, and to me, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is still the greatest fraternity ever on God's green earth. But Tom, one of the things that drew me to the fraternity, outside of looking at the history and all the great men that came through here, is that it seemed like we stepped up to the occasion. We would rise to the occasion, fighting discrimination, helping establish the NAACP, you know, doing things with helping small businesses. And certainly, we're key players when it comes to education. We're raising money for scholarships. So all those things are great things, Tom. And looking back on our past history, we've done some great things. In fact, one of our precepts is that we are the school for the better making of men. And it seemed like that was a true statement, Tom, years ago during our inception. Now I'm not so sure that that's the case, and I've been very disappointed with not just our fraternity, but for all the fraternities for the most part. And because to me now the greatest thing that threatens the black community is absentee fatherhood, Tom, and I just don't see enough effort being placed on that single issue, from the fraternities. So black men, and we're talking about the alphas, the kappas, the qs, the sigmas. You're talking hundreds of thousands of professional black men, educated black men. And Tom, we need to get together and hold our brothers accountable for our actions. It is not cool, it is not acceptable to leave a woman pregnant and not participate in the raising of that child. So absentee fathers is that something that we have to provide a solution to, Tom. And so I have started a new personal coaching sort of series. It's called The Ways of the Caveman. You can go out there and Google it on YouTube, or go out to my Patreon if you want to and subscribe to the videos. It's only $5 a month. But Tom, I'm determined that I want to do my part to help young men bridge the gap from a lack of knowledge on how to be a man, stop buying into the feminist nonsense that somehow masculinity is toxic. God made you to be a man and to be masculine. So there's nothing wrong with that. So what's wrong is when men try to emulate being women, and there are a lot of men, Tom, who've given up on being men and just decide to become women. Join them. If you can't beat them, join them. And so this whole trans woman movement is just part of that. But for women out there, I feel for you because there's so many weak men out here who don't know how to be men. And I know that that seems attractive at first, but over time, Tom, the studies show that two-thirds of women that were married to beta men end up getting divorced in the first 7 years. And the 35% that don't get divorced are not happy in their marriages. And let's face it, the bottom line is women really do not like beta men after a while. They're weak, they're feckless, and they're sorry. And being not dumping on women or being abusive to women does not make you a good man. It just makes you a neutral man. And most women would rather have a bad man who has some manly characteristics than have a so-called quote unquote good man. So the reason that they're saying that good men finish last is for a reason, because you're not that good. But if you want to turn it around, Tom, come check out the videos. Come support me on Patreon, $5 a month. Get involved. It's not too late to turn things around. Oh, no, thank you for that personal plug.
Absolutely. And one thing that I would have to say is going back to a lot of our fraternities and sororities, but practically every one of them have programs that are helping to mentor and nurture young men on the fraternity side and young women. But it's not what you're going to typically see on CNN or even your local news with a few rare exceptions, Jimmy. The chapter that I'm involved with here in the Arlington area, or kind of the southern quadrant of the DFW area, practically every chapter of our fraternity, and even the Kappa Guide Ride program. I know the Omegas have a program as well that mentor and groom young men. Unfortunately, you're not going to really see that, and we have to be our own best advocates for that. And we have a program that's called Project Alpha, and it talks about adult male responsibility in relationships that not just deals with relationships with women or sexually transmitted diseases, but adult male responsibility as well. So with that being said, I mean, with our chapter, we have 50, 60 something young men just in our program locally as well. And I know a lot of other chapters kind of duplicate something as well, but I don't think you can ever have enough. It does start at home. It does start with the father. And so it has to be a two-way relationship. Even if the mother and the father don't stay
That's
together,
true.
it is important that you have a father figure, not just for the young men, but for the young women as well. Because I think what we've also seen, to your point about young men, is you have some women, young women, not all, who try to overcompensate for the lack of healthy, functional male figures in their lives. That affects them in a certain way as well. So, with that being said, we just have to continue to promote the platforms that we have in order to address some of these
Well,
issues. And of
Tommy, you're
course,
correct. I mean,
it sounds like you have a great program as well. And so we definitely want to support that as well. I'm glad that you shared what you're doing, even though people are going to probably be looking at you sideways when they talk about going back to a
Tom, you
caveman
got to
era.
go back to the basics, man. That's all it's about. But you're right. I mean, all the organizations, everybody has a program, some programs for mentoring young men. And all I'm saying, Tom, is that education, violence, crime, persons. I mean, those are all great areas to tackle. But the single greatest threat to Black people today is absentee fathers in those homes, and a lot more needs to be said, and a lot more needs to be done to correct that one single issue. You take care of that, you take care of a bunch of other downstream issues that we're talking about. So we're tackling some of the downstream issues. It doesn't seem like we're tackling that one homelessness. I mean, not homelessness, but absentee fathers in the home with enough vigor. And then not just a fraternity. I mean, this sorority should be tackling this also. There are a lot of great women out there, Tom, who will never ever have a good man in their life, and that's sad. And I think this year or last year was a tipping point where statistically now the majority of women will never be married, will never have families, never have children, and that's sad because that's been the cornerstone of the sort of the American dream, was to get the house, a nice car, and have the nice quality of life, but also have a family and have children and a husband. And you go through the same struggles that everybody else went through to maintain that. But that seemed to be eroding. It already started in the '60s with Black families. Now it's just starting to affect some white families and starting to get a little attention. But Tom, we've been dealing with this for the last 60 years with men walking out on their families, not taking care of their responsibility. And Tom, enough tiptoeing around it. We need to hold our brothers accountable for what we're doing and speak out on it. So I'm just asking for everyone out there to just do a little bit more. The mentoring is great, but mentor young men on how to become responsible men and family men is something that our community is much needed in our community.
Agreed on that, Jimmy. I do want to bring up one point in terms of the question regarding the loans a little bit earlier.
Okay,
Mackie Samuels had a great quote here responding to Ms. LBC. An option to consider is the ROTC, Recruiting Officers Training Corps. I know
that's how
that
I
you're a
got. That's how
military
I pay
guy.
for my school.
Exactly, to pay for college and have a great job after graduation. Scholarships pay for tuition for a variety of majors. And if you go to graduate school in healthcare, the military will pay for that also, all debt free. For those who were not aware of that, in addition to Ms. LBC, who are looking at an option, but that is a fantastic program. I know a lot of folks who I went to school with who are part of the ROTC.
Well, Tom, in addition to your tuition being paid, you also get a monthly stipend during the summer when you go serve full time. You get the full time pay for that time, so that gives you some extra money going back into the fall when you start back school. I mean, I was working at UPS unloading trucks at night to pay my way through school, and every week I was taking my paycheck over to the bursar office and just endorse it and hand it to them. And so I ended up joining ROTC. Um, after my freshman year, during my sophomore year, in order to get my tuition paid, and so I can get some sleep at night rather than walk over to UPS from University of New Orleans over to um, what was that? I can't think of the major street over New Orleans East. I had to walk that time. It was an hour to walk that distance every night at 2 in the morning. So I'm not getting home till back to the dorm till 3:30 in the morning, and then have to get back up to go to class in a few hours. So I was happy to give that life up and allow the government to pay. And it cost me 5 years after I graduated, but Tom, I already had a job lined up. I had a way to take care. I married my college sweetheart. We had a child while we were in the military, which meant that the medical cost was paid for by the government. So I have nothing but good things to say about the ROTC and for the military for those who go into it afterwards.
Yes, sir. And want to acknowledge a couple of other folks on the chat line. Miss Celia Reese, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Miss Bonnie Scott, want to thank you for joining us as well. And our financial guru and
Oh, John, well, yeah, Miss Williams.
John Williams is on the line as well. CPA is what I was trying to think of, extraordinaire, who has been on this show a couple times. We will have to have him back before the
Extraordinary
end of the
guy.
year to give
If
exactly
you,
some tax advice. So we want to thank everybody for joining us on the chat line. Let's go ahead and go to our next story, Jimmy. You know, this is something that should also be pretty close to your heart, Jimmy. They've got some pending challenges in the New Orleans area, Jimmy. I think you know what's going on there with a potential water crisis. We've talked about Flint. We have talked about, of course, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, and New Orleans may be looking at some issues with a water crisis there.
and Tom, and that's amazing because they're surrounded by water. So you have the lake, very large lake, Pontchartrain on one side. You have the Mississippi River on the other side. The city sits in the middle. Um, I think when I was in school there, the city was about 10 feet under sea level, which is not a good thing. They had some really antiquated water pumps to pump water out of the city, and there's some area of that city that floods almost every day. Any kind of short rain. When I say short, you're talking some showers that last 15, 20 minutes is enough to put that city underwater. So it's not a good thing. I think one of our frat brothers, Dexter Joseph, I believe he may still work for the water company there. And last time I was there for a chapter reunion, he was telling me how they were investing in these German pumps that work underwater. The pumps will still work even if the city is flooded, and the pumps are flooded. So I hope they've done more to do that, Tom. But I think you're alluding to drinking water, if I'm not mistaken.
You're exactly correct because what's happening is, you know, with the Mississippi, it is significantly under sea level and it's below its normal water level, Jimmy. And then you got water coming from the Gulf of Mexico that's going upstream, and because of drought and because of other situations, what this is doing is it's pushing salt water into the Mississippi water and is not able to push it back, Jimmy. And this could potentially affect up to 1 million people in New Orleans. And mind you, the metropolitan area of New Orleans is about 1.5 or more. So this is pretty significant.
Yes, Tom, and that was always a big issue when I lived there and went to school was fresh water and salt water. So sometimes when the city floods, for instance, you would think, okay, well, you have a river and a lake, you can just pump the water there. Well, actually, you can't because I believe the lake may be a saltwater lake, and so if you pump a bunch of fresh water into it from in order to relieve the city from flooding, you would offset the chemical balance of the lake. So that was always a challenge on how to dissipate water from the city without interfering or even going into the Gulf. So, so that's always a challenge, Tom. And yeah, personally, I mean, I think after Katrina, man, if I had my way, I would have leveled the entire city. The Corps of Engineers been fighting to keep the river on a certain path that's unnatural. The city naturally wants to go right through the city of New Orleans and flood it. They've been keeping that river on an unnatural bend, which causes problems. And so that's gonna, mean that they're gonna have water problems, Tom, forever. And now with the river levels being lower and the Gulf water is pushing up into the river, that's certainly going to disrupt the chemistry of the river with all that salt water. I mean, generally you can go down to Homer and down the Owls down there, and you can actually see the boundary time of water from the Gulf, salt water from the Gulf, and fresh water from the river where they collide. I mean, you can actually see a physical boundary and when they come together. With that coming further and further up the river, that really is going to disrupt things.
Yeah, Jimmy. So hopefully, I don't know. There's not a quick fix to this, Jimmy, but we definitely hope that this is something they can get
And
resolved
it's not
soon,
just
Jimmy.
the
Because
river. I mean, you have thousands upon thousands of canals that flow off that river into throughout Louisiana. So, and you're talking about the crawfish industry there could be disrupted from and other fishing from those owls and canals, Tom. So, yeah, this is probably not a good thing, and hopefully they get it resolved. Find a way to maybe push more fresh water into the river to offset Gulf water from coming up into the river.
well, Jimmy, we may have to pipe some water from Texas to Louisiana. God knows we need it in July and August, but we may have to help them out, Jimmy.
I don't know if Texas has it because we have our water problems here. You have some towns that run out of water, but in areas in town, that wouldn't be a bad idea for us to have a national pipeline for water. You know, for areas that flood up and down the river and some other areas, be able to put that water into a pipeline and pump it to areas where water is in low demand or high demand but in low supply.
Yeah, Jimmy, with the greatest engineering minds that we have at our disposal, I know there's always a way to fix this. So hopefully we can get this resolved and help support the folks in Louisiana. They've done a lot for the country, they've done a lot for the world, and this is probably, an expensive problem to fix, but one that's well worth having.
Well, if someone decides to take it up and the government decides to fund it, just remember, hey, I threw the idea out there first, so send me a royalty check or some kind of a creative concept check. It'd be much appreciated.
All
So,
right,
so
Jimmy,
Tom, what's our next story?
our next story is international, Jimmy. I know you brought this up a little bit earlier, but we talked about this briefly before. But of course, there is somewhat been a what they call a coup, what I call a shifting of the guard in the Gabon, on
Yes.
the continent of Africa, Jimmy. As we've talked about in some other countries, the military regime actually took out the not literally as in dead, but the military has taken over in the country of Gabon after the most recent election in late August. Uh, Ali Bong, who was the then president, basically was put under house arrest under charges of basically a lack of trust and obviously corruption in the election cycle after it was over with and the military decided to take over, Jimmy. And, it's kind of interesting because if we look at this, obviously there have been several countries where the
Every
military
week,
has
Tom,
taken
we seem
over.
to be talking about this.
And Gabon has actually been suspended from the African Union and the Economic Community of Central African States as well. And they, in essence, one, taken over the government, and for lack of a better term, the interim president, General Bryce Oligui, actually took a trip recently to the Congo, which is right next door to Gabon, to build political alliances.
Well, Tom, I mean, you know my position on this. Never is it okay for the military to take over the government, especially when you have elections. So, listen, we know that there's a lot of cheating taking place in elections. Hell, there's even cheating taking place in American elections, from people stuffing ballots, filling out voter registration cards for dead people and voting for them. So these kind of things happen. But when the election's over and certified, you simply have to accept it, the good with the bad. That's just the way it is, and you work towards freer and more open and honest elections for the future. But whatever the outcome is, no matter how the person got there through hook or crook or through an honest election, you accept the result and you move on. That's just the way it is, and that's unfortunate. That's how democracy has to work, Tom. The military cannot step in every time that there's some voter irregularities. If that was the case, every election here would have the military stepping in and take over, because there's always some state, some district, somewhere where there are more ballots than people. There's no downstream selections on ballots. They all seem to be signed with the same handwriting, same pen, and so we go through this every election. But in the end, no matter who wins, no matter how you think they won or cheated, we certify the elections time, and then we live with the results. And so all we can do is just make the work towards making the next election fair as possible.
Well,
And
Jimmy, this
so,
is the rub in looking at the history and the politics of this. One, the military actually has the support of the people. And if you dig into this a little bit, um, Ali Bongo, who was the president, I believe this is maybe his third or fourth term, actually is the son of the former president who basically had ruled the country for 42 years.
yes.
And Jimmy, at the end of the day, there should be a statute of limitations. Obviously, we have no cause to change how someone handles their politics. But if you have a family and or a particular ruler who's been running the country for 40 years, there's an old saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I'm not trying to make any implications, but if you have been running the country for 40 years, things kind of end up happening. Then your son comes in, and the people have gotten to a point where obviously they feel that there's a change on the
Well,
horizon that
well,
needs to
Tom, if
happen.
the military would take over and then restore some normalcy, put things back in the hands of civilian control, maybe give the parliament there a chance to amend the Constitution, to put in term limits, to keep things. If that was happening, then I would be okay with it. I'd say this is just a temporary blip, but they don't seem to be doing that. So they seem to take over, and I don't see where things get any better. All you're doing is transferring control from one family entity to another.
Well, Jimmy, in this case, when you have a family that's been in place for 60 some odd years, Jimmy, if there is no other channel to do so, in essence, what most of these countries have been doing, military takes over, they take the president out of his role, and then what they do is they typically commit to fair and impartial democratic elections. And it seems like, I can't say for sure, the implication here is that when you have one family that's in control for 6 decades, there's very little fair and impartial.
Well, Tom, put in some term limits.
Exactly, that's what needs to happen. But when you have the person who's been in control, if their family's been in control for 6 decades, typically they're not going to allow term limitations. It's going to be
Well,
passed down from someone who's controlled, in this case, the government for 40 years to his son who controls for, I don't know how long after that. But the people said it's time for a change.
Well, I'm hoping that they restore civilian control, Tom, get back to being a democracy, and just understand that the military taking over is not the answer to every election that you think is unfair. Because here in America, we know that every election, Tom, every presidential election, half the nation is happy, half the nation is unhappy. That's just the process that we have to live with and accept. So you're not always going to have the person that you support in office. So sometimes you have to live under a Republican rule. Sometimes you have to live under a Democrat rule, or sometimes there's mixed government. But whatever the composition is, we generally accept our elections. We're not happy about them. We may make noise, but in the end, there's no overthrow. We don't send the military out to seize the White House and take control.
Yep, Jimmy. So that is the good thing about American politics, if we'll call it good, is that you can only serve 2 terms. After FDR served his 4 terms until he died, that was it. And unfortunately, when you have a situation where you have one family that's in control for over half a century, typically those rules don't get put in place.
And we don't have enough term control. I mean, the term limits here, Tom. We need to have for Congress and for the Senate, because some of those guys like Feinstein, when she was in
Yeah,
Congress for 50 years,
90 years old, Jimmy. There's
90
no
years
way
old.
she should still be serving after 90 years, after being 90 years of age.
Mitch McConnell, and he's up there in years. He's been in Congress over 50 years, 60 years. Joe Biden was in Congress for
Yeah,
50
you're right.
years
And
before he went.
Mitch McConnell had some issues on the interview that he looked starstruck. So I mean, it's about time. He might need to go
Well,
ahead and hand it over to somebody else.
Tom, I mean, I'm kind of getting up there in years myself. I'm not quite their age, but I understand. You can lose your train of thought sometimes, and you would think, hey, I just had that thought and it's gone. I should be able to get it back quickly. But you'd be surprised sometimes when the camera's in front of you and lights are on you and people are asking you questions, how difficult it is to get that line of thought back when it's lost. And the older you get, the more that happens. So that's just to be expected with people who are older and especially less active. So if you want to do something about it, keep your brain healthy and exercise. Stay physically active, and then continue to use your brain for something other than porn, internet, and TikTok.
And Jimmy, and get plenty of rest. I think the doctor
Yes.
said, at least 7 to 8 hours of rest, but get plenty of rest. That's when the body takes time to restore itself, your brain to resync. So getting rest, to your point, drinking plenty of water, eating a healthy diet, and getting some exercise, Jimmy.
Well, yes, and I know you, Tom, get lots of rest, and I know you drink lots of water, because obviously you carrying gallons of water with you places to drink. So, yeah, take it from someone who actually lives that life. Tom lives a very healthy lifestyle, so which is why he looks the way he looks. So, um, I am now getting into a healthy lifestyle, Tom, only because I've been sick near death twice. So I've had to be kicked. I've gone into a healthy lifestyle, kicking and screaming, but I finally gotten the memo and starting to do the right thing here. So, what's our next
And Jimmy,
story, Tom?
we are just out of time, Jimmy. It's 9 o'clock,
Is it nine
and
already?
it is 9:01,
Did
Jimmy.
we
So we
cover
have
all the stories that we had on the agenda for
You
the
know
day?
what? The only thing that we did not cover, we talked about Burkina Faso a couple of times already, Jimmy. So we may have to cover that. I don't think that story is going away anytime soon.
Okay. Tom, let's do that for next week. And also, I would like to spend some time. Let's talking about education for our kids and setting the bar really high. You're not doing kids any favors by allowing them to skate through school. We already know how poor the schools are when it comes to educating our kids. So we need to, if your kids are forced into public education, set the bar really high for them. Make them go to school and learn something, and then you supplement that at home. So school is not the final answer to educating our kids. With that being said, Tom, I guess we need to go ahead and just say goodbye and check out. And want to thank everyone for watching the show this week. Please come back next week as we do our absolute best to provide the news and information that deals with the Black issues in the Black community. And if you have any suggestions for topics or things you want us to talk about, email us, put in the chat line, give us a phone call. We love to hear from you. And if we don't hear from you, then you're going to leave it up to Tommy and I to figure it out. Um, but this is your show just as well as our show, so we're in this together. So the things you want to hear, you want to discuss, feel free to bring them up with us.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Thank you. See you next week.